Hey guys, this is King Under the Mountain. Today is Skyrim's 10th anniversary, and so I thought I'd celebrate it by making a video. You're going to hear from some of my friends on why they love Skyrim, and then I'll give my piece at the end. Also, I'd like to mention that some of my points were inspired by White Light's video on Skyrim, and I'm going to link that in the description. Without further ado,
Take it away, Marisu.
The first time that I got into Skyrim was actually the day that it came out, November 11, 2011. It was really amazing for me. It was a lot different. I remember back then I was with my brother at GameStop and I asked the guy at the counter what was the Elder Scrolls. He explained to me a little bit, so I got it on PlayStation 3 because back then was the only thing that I could play on it, and it was just different. It was just something really different. It was open world, which is something I've never played before. I remember that I played it for like through 5 p.m. to 7 a.m. Yeah, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m., which was something amazing for me back then. Now it's just regular, but it was just different. I can't tell you anything else. For me, it was a lovable experience. So I think that my favorite quest in Skyrim is A Night to Remember. I think it's my favorite quest because I remember the first time I played it it was very funny because I just had seen The Hangover, the movie, and this quest is basically The Hangover as a quest. It's really funny because well, for the people who don't know, this quest is you basically enter a tavern and there's a guy named Sam Van who challenged you to a drinking contest, and with him you find out that you don't lose a drinking contest, but basically what happened is you wake up in Temple of Dibella, and after that you go to Rorikstead because you sold someone's good and sold it to a giant, and then after that you find out that you married some witch thing. It's really funny. It's like, I think it's one of my favorite quests, and it really is a funny quest because it takes you out of game a little bit, and it's really funny because you're all doing all this adventure stuff, you're all like going after dragons and shit, and all of a sudden you just drink so much that you don't remember anything that you did. I think it's the funniest thing in the world. My favorite city, it's kind of weird, but it's between Winterhold and Riften. The reason is because Riften is like a political city. It's weird because you have all these underground stuff that's happening with the guild and the people who are or behind the guild, and Winterhold is for me on the same par with it because it's out there. It's like out there in the north. Nobody really. The only reason why it's known is because of the college, and it's when you enter it, it's like so different in every single city that you've entered. It's so different compared to Whiterun because you enter, there's just 3 or 4 buildings. There's one guy who sells, and there's one inn, and that's about it. And that's why I think Winterhold is one of my favorite cities with Riften. It's just so different. It's so out of there. It really is different for me. It's kind of hard to say that I have a favorite faction because on one hand you have the Stormcloak, who are technically racist because they all think that Nord is the only good race. Well, technically, if you play anything else than a Nord, they will absolutely love if you join the Stormcloak. But on the other hand, you have the Imperial, who thinks about the people and who thinks about everyone, but they're just being manipulated by the Talmor. So it's kind of weird. I do say that the Stormcloak will be my favorite just because it's really barbaric and it's really Nordic and it's really fun to play. But on the end, I could understand why people choose the Imperial because technically they think about everybody. But I don't think I trust anybody who is controlled by Eye Health. Fuck the Eye Healths. I do you feel like something that needs to be addressed with Skyrim, even though it's a really good game, but the thing that made this game quite good back then and still is really fun to pick out sometimes, it's his bug. His bug will be really funny. For example, it made a meme back in the day called physics. Bitch, I'm a horse, because the horse in Skyrim were just so like out of place, because they will be on a mountain 90 degrees and they will still go up like nothing is happening. That's really amazing. That's a good part of the bugs. The bad parts is the fact that it made one of the best quests playable. This quest is Blood on the Ice. This quest had so much potential. For those of you who don't know, is in Winterhold, you are investigating a series of murder that has seen several young women dead and mutilated. This quest was amazing because there's no hint, there's nothing that tells you in advance who is the killer. This one had so much potential, but instead it is known for almost being one, if not the only one, buggiest quest in this game. It's either the quest will start up, the quest will be buggy from the entry because you accidentally killed an important member of this quest earlier, because since they were killable, you just did it. Or literally the quest will not end even though you had the right answers. It's just the most buggiest quest. My favorite thing about Skyrim will be the fact that you can replay it. Nowadays, if you have it on PC, it's really amazing how much you can just download one mod and the thing will change differently. But even if you don't do that, even if you just play it on the Switch or anything else, I will say it's amazing how you can just start a game and have a total different experience. The game has so much in-depth lore and stuff. It's amazing. You could, if you started as a Nord, which I think is like what 80% or 70% people did, because they are basically the white people of Skyrim, you have technically the experience that Bethesda wanted you to have. But they also thought of people who wanted to play Khajiit or High Elves. It's every time you play a different race, you have different experience in the city, or different people who say something different to you when you're in a quest. You have so much possibility to just replay the game a lot of the time. In the 10 years that Skyrim has been out, and every time I will replay it, there's never once been a moment where I was bored of it. Every time I would just replay it, I would have a different experience. Yes, of course mods helped, but that's part of the community. That's part of what Skyrim is. It's the community creating mods behind it. What is amazed me about this game is that people are still making mods to this day. 10 years later, people still play it. 10 years later, people are still finding about Skyrim and are still playing it for the first time. Not too long ago, a friend of mine played Skyrim for the first time. It was because it was on Game Pass. That is why Skyrim, in my heart, will be the best game that you will ever play, and the best game down in history, for the fact that you can still 10 years later play this game and have a different experience every single time.
Huge thanks to Frenchie for doing that. He's one of my closer friends, so I'm glad that he got to say his piece, and then as promised, I'm going to say my piece. So first of all, I think that the exploration in Skyrim was one of the best features. I mean, the fact that like you could just go anywhere you wanted to, pretty much from the get-go. I mean, there's no like locked areas like there are in other games. It was completely open world. That was one of the better parts for me. Another one is the soundtrack. I mean, my god, I thought Morrowind and Oblivion had good soundtracks, but Skyrim just knocked it out of the park. The Dragonborn theme especially, oh my gosh. I still get chills listening to that. Another thing is the world feels like it's like living and breathing. It doesn't feel like it's the world revolving around you. It feels like if you were to take yourself out of the game, it would still, like, people would continue, doing their daily business. I mean, it does get complicated with you being the Dragonborn and all, but I still feel like the world can stand on itself, which is something that a lot of RPGs lack today. Another factor for me was that the progression in Skyrim was done the way it should be, which is with very little scaling. Not going to name any names, but I think you know what I'm talking about here. But in Skyrim, you start out being basically a nobody who can't even fight a troll. I mean, you have, like, no place in the world. Even when it's, found out that you're Dragonborn, I mean, you're still pretty much a nobody, and people treat you that way. And then later down the road, once you've done the main quest and the DLCs, I mean, you're capable of rivaling, like, vampire lords and master mages and, like, demigods. So, I mean, there's a huge spectrum there in terms of how your character is seen by the world of Skyrim, and I think that's really cool. Obviously, Simon touched on this a little bit earlier, but the modding scene is incredible. Skyrim is still the most modded game on Nexus. And the second most modded game is another version of Skyrim, so that should tell you something. Some mods have become so popular in Skyrim that they have their own game, most notably the Forgotten City. So, I mean, and the fact that they're still pumping this shit out, like, 10 years later is fucking incredible. So, although the main story is, admittedly pretty weak, I think the faction questlines are really good. The Civil War especially, some of those battles are incredible. I think that the Stormcloaks and Imperials both having their own flaws is interesting. Kind of the same way they did it in New Vegas, where, like, every faction has its own flaw so that none of them are, like, the easy answer. I think Skyrim kind of did that too with the Stormcloaks and Imperials, where the Stormcloaks are a little bit racist and the Imperials are, like, complete pawns of the Thalmor. Another thing, the DLC is really solid. Dawnguard especially so. Dragonborn was good too, but I think Dawnguard was probably better than the base game. Fort Dawnguard and Castle Volkihar are really awesome places to visit in the world, and I felt like they definitely spent some time on those two areas. And the questline as well just feels like an all-out war between warriors and vampires. The Civil War did this as well, but Dawnguard, this whole, like, dichotomy of vampires versus warriors, I just thought it was really fucking cool. Another thing that Frenchie touched on earlier, the cities are immersive as hell. Whiterun, for me at least, is like the epitome of a Tolkien fantasy town. It has taverns, it has this, well, it doesn't have a castle. It has this, like, keep area that reminds me of the Rohan thing from the Two Towers. It has jails, it has shops, it has areas where, the citizens live. Whiterun just feels like the best city in the game for me. I also really love that the different areas of the map all have their own, like, almost personalities. So, like, Eastmarch and Winterhold are the classic, like, northern feel, like, Nordic. The Rift is kind of this fall season area, you know, very like West Virginia feeling. And then the Reach is this mountainous region with, you know, dwarven influence all over. So I thought that was really cool as well. And then I think my final point is that Skyrim gives you more freedom than virtually any other RPG on the market. Frenchie touched on this earlier as well, but the game is basically replayable, you know, infinite times because of this. The only limitation is how many creative characters you can think of. I mean, you know, even with, you know, just 8 races and I forget how many skills there are, there's just so many possibilities for how you choose to build your character, which makes the game basically infinitely replayable. And like Frenchie said, I mean, 10 years go by and people are still playing this game because you never run out of things to do. Even if you run out of things to do in one playthrough, there's still an infinite number of playthroughs that you could do. Which is why I have, I think, 700 hours on record in Skyrim, both PC and Switch combined. And I still feel like I've barely scratched the surface of what the game has to offer. Of course, I should say you can also just jump into it casually, and there's nothing wrong with that. Or you can be like me and spend 5 hours creating this character with a backstory and D&D alignment. Or you could just do it in a minute. It's really up to you. And so I think the sense of freedom in Skyrim is pretty much unrivaled. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. This is my first real video, and I'm excited it could be this. And make sure to subscribe, like, do all of that, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.